The article I chose to critique is called The Economic Effects of Refuge Return by Yuri Darush. I came to find this article on economicsejournal.org. If it's unclear from the title, the issue discussed in the article are the economic effects, whether they be positive or negative, of refugee flow from poor countries to more developed countries. Overall, the article was very enticing. I very much agree with the author's conclusion and his defense, but just like most of any article, there are many things that could have been done to make it better. I'd like to begin my critique by saying that the title of the article doesn't really fit the majority of the information in the article. While Darush does talk a fair amount of refuge return, a majority of the talk on economics was focused on the benefits and downsides of integrating refugees into the country they flee to. At the beginning of the article, Darush did talk a lot about how refugees are typically returned and why they might return voluntarily. It wasn't until the last section of the article, before the conclusion, that Darush started to talk even slightly of what happens economically with refuge return. So, overall, a more fitting title would have been, quote, The Economic Pros and Cons of Integrating Refugees into the Country They Flee to. Next, while the abstract works as an incredible hook, it doesn't work very well as a hook for this particular article. In the entirety of the abstract, the word economics was only utilized once, and it was just to say what was already known from the title, that the article focused on an economic perspective of this global issue. Other than that, the abstract simply defined what refuge return meant, which ended up not even being the main topic of the article. As it turns out, the article ended up focusing more on refugees that were in place at their new country, rather than what would happen if they returned to their country of origin, economically speaking. While this article isn't particularly long, there are some sections in it that serve almost no purpose. In the section titled, quote, Return of Refugees from Advanced Countries to Developing Countries is Rare, unquote, none of the information pertains to the economic effects of refugees. This entire section could very simply be cut from the article, and it would overall improve the article because it serves no purpose at the moment except to fill space. In fact, a majority of this section is the history of refugees from Bosnia-Herzegovina, rather than being a more modern refugee issue. All the other sections are very pertinent to the purpose and subject of the article, but because of the wide and different ways refugees affect the economy, much of the other information is cramped, so it could do with a bit of expanding to fill the space left from the cutting of the non-necessary section. One thing in this article that wasn't very relevant at all was that Darush chose to not focus on just a few countries, but rather he chose to focus on refugees from Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia, South Sudan, Iraq, Myanmar, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and many others. With that, Darush was never able to just focus on one country's refugees. Because he was not able to do that, when data was discussed, there was just a mess and clash of many numbers. It was not a good idea for Darush to fully consider this many countries in the writing of his article, because it just made it more confusing and a mess. As of right now, most people only know about the refugee situations in Syria and Afghanistan. If he were to only have solely focused on those two countries, it would have been much easier to understand because most people, including myself, already have a basic understanding of those two crises. Now, some of the things Darush did very well in his article are the following. For starters, the introduction gets right down to business. In the third sentence, Darush asks the question, quote, Is it in the economic self-interest of advanced countries to return forcibly displaced persons, unquote. This question, to be specific, is the one he strives to answer through the whole article. On top of that, he doesn't give away his conclusion whatsoever in the introduction. So the whole article truly builds up to his final point that it is more beneficial to aid in integrating refugees into countries rather than trying to send them back. As well as his incredible introduction, Darush did an incredible job at presenting the data he had found so as to display it in a manner that conveyed what he wanted the reader to understand. Through the way he portrayed the data throughout the article, Darush helped push the reader to the same conclusion he had come to with his economic background. This is definitely something he did correctly so as to make his article as persuasive as it could be. Overall, the subject the subject of refugees, that is, was something I already knew a fair amount about after having written many papers on it. But with the reading of this article and how it has helped me understand the economics of it, I really feel as though I know this subject better than many people. I did not ever really consider how refugees support the economy a lot, more in the end to balance out how they cost in the beginning. So now I understand that not only is it the humanitarian thing to do, but it is the economical choice as well.